How did y'all enjoy the race to first finish?
Go, 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 go! Come on! Come on! Come on!
Do you spell word? Do you spell word?
This is what I thought of it, guys. This is what I think of the race to first finish. Well, yeah, so I guess the boss died. That was so strange. It was so strange. Like, I woke up in the morning. I didn't even check the race because I woke up. I wake up at a time where Echo hasn't started raiding yet and Liquid is asleep. Like, there's like this one like short moment where sometimes that happens. Well, so anyway, so I woke up and I was like, I'm just gonna check Discord and, you know, Twitter and whatever. And then people were like, guess the boss died. And I'm like, huh? So I checked, and the boss died. Interesting. It was just so strange. And don't get me wrong, let me say something before we talk about this any further. I do think that Liquid played incredibly well and they're insane gamers and they clearly deserved to win this race to first. Like, I'm not at all trying to make it any less of an achievement or whatever for Liquid because they did obviously play really well. Huge congrats to Liquid. They played incredible like they did last year as well. I mean, last year they probably played even better if that's even possible. But the last boss or the whole tuning of the tier is definitely a little bit And I don't think that Blizzard intended this to happen either. So here's my hot take. And in my head, this makes sense. We all know that the race to first is really good for World of Warcraft when it comes to like the marketing aspect of it, right? So the race to first is a community event that gathers so many viewers that any other gaming company could dream of being a community event, right? Most other games have to create these events themselves and pay for them themselves to get all of this marketing and all of this attention into the game, right? Blizzard, on the other hand, they're lucky enough to have the race to first be a community organized event and still get so many viewers that they get all of the benefits from the marketing aspect of it, right? So Blizzard definitely cares about the race to first quite a lot because it is, you know, beneficial to them. So I think that Blizzard definitely did not intend this to happen like that. They just got in a little bit of a, they were just in a little bit of a tricky situation. They probably did not expect or didn't really want Styx to and Lock and Step to like last this long. They kind of have gotten into a situation where they were getting closer and closer to the reset of the second week. And the absolute worst thing that can happen for the race to first, for the viewers, for the raiders, and for Blizzard, is if the last boss dies around the reset time. Because we all know that we do not have a reset that is aligned. We have Tuesday reset for NA and we have Wednesday reset for EU. So Blizzard tries very hard for bosses to not die around reset time because that will make it really unfair and no one would like that, right? The problem was because of some of the previous bosses tuning that was a little bit harder than they probably expected. The second reset has gotten to like a point where they were probably thinking, fuck, if Gallywix is really difficult now, then the boss might die on Tuesday for an A, and that'd be really bad. So Blizzard was in a situation where they were like, fuck, we need the boss to die this reset, so we need to make sure that it's not too hard, but we also don't want to make it too easy because otherwise it's underwhelming. And probably what happened is that they just missed the mark a little. They made the boss slightly too easy than what they wanted it to be. I do think that they wanted the boss to be a little bit harder to die around Monday or so. Because the biggest problem, or the biggest downside for Blizzard in this one is that they took away the excitement of the last boss. And that is the #1 thing that gives the most viewers from the whole race, right? Which is the biggest marketing point of the race to first is right before the last boss dies. The amount of people that are watching the race to first right before the last boss dies is incredible, right? Especially if the race is close between the guilds. This is definitely not something that Blizzard intended, and they definitely quite missed the mark. which sucks for everyone kind of involved, because the goal that Blizzard has is also the goal that we have as viewers, right? We want the race to be close, because that's when it's the most exciting. Gallywix in particular was definitely like a letdown when it comes from when it's from us viewers, right? From a viewer perspective, the last boss definitely was a letdown. I'm not sure how it was for the raiders. Like, I assume they also wanted it to be a little bit harder, I guess. But for us viewers, it was definitely like meh. The race would have had a lot more viewers if it was a close race, is what I'm saying. Like the whole Warcraft channel, because Blizzard does not care who has the viewers. Like, Blizzard doesn't care if it's Max that has the viewers, or the Liquid channel, or the Echo channel, or Gingy. Like, they don't care. They want the viewers to be in the Warcraft section, right? For Blizzard, that's what they want. Because no matter who they're watching, it's still advertisement for the game in the end, right? So if the race would have been close between the two teams, and it would have been like a back and forth, kind of like Firak, then there would have been a lot more viewers. Obviously, right? I think we can all agree that that's true. Because the way it happened now was that Max did get a lot of viewers, but only like once they killed it or right before they killed it. And then they were gone pretty quickly afterwards again. Like, Max only had this like spike in viewership for a short amount of time. If the race would have been really close between Echo and Liquid, and it would have been like a back and forth for a couple of hours, then the viewership would have been really high across the board for a long period of time, right? Until the boss dies. Which obviously would have been better for everyone involved, the viewers and Blizzard, and probably also the main broadcast from the orcs as well. Liquid said they loved progging the boss, whose mechanics were unknown. Yeah, I can imagine that's really fun. But it was too easy, yeah. I think no matter what, they would complain. Yeah, oh yeah, people always complain no matter what. But I think people can voice their opinions without it necessarily being it's like, oh, they're complaining all the time, you know, like I think most people that love watching the race so first can agree that this race wasn't really that exciting to watch at the end. I mean, whoever says otherwise is just coping really hard. Like, clearly, it wasn't a close race. That doesn't mean that some of the previous bosses were bad, or it doesn't mean that Liquid doesn't deserve the win or whatever. Like, that, obviously they do, as I mentioned earlier. Like, obviously Liquid deserves the win, and I'm not trying to take away from their win. But to say that the race was like super exciting to watch at the end, like that would just be cope, because it wasn't. Like, if you compare this to like something like Firak or whatever, then I also think the last race wasn't that exciting to watch because Liquid was so far ahead. Now, the last race was more exciting to watch at the end than this one, because Anzarak was more difficult and closer, or like a more exciting way of the race to end compared to Gallywix. But still, like, the closer the race is, the more interesting it is to watch, in my opinion. And I assume most people kind of agree with this, right? Yeah, I don't think, I definitely think that Blizzard did not think that some of the earlier bosses were as difficult as they were. And I do think that they wanted Gallywix to be a little bit harder, because obviously the boss didn't need to die when it died. The boss could have survived until today, and it would have been fine. Right? Like, as long as the boss does not survive the reset, the second reset, it's all good. Of course, they shouldn't make it super close, because if they make it so close that it then actually just goes into the reset, then it's all messed up, right? Blizzard didn't intend some of the earlier bosses to be as hard as they were, and Blizzard also didn't intend Gallywix to die as fast as it did. I'm pretty sure about this. Obviously, I don't know for certain, because I can't read their minds. But I very heavily assume that they didn't want the boss to die when it died. Gallywix seemed to be lacking a face. I don't necessarily think that Gallywix was lacking a face. I think it just lacked some difficulty. Is it bad in the first place that they are trying to influence the race in that way? What do you mean? Like, obviously, Blizzard is influencing the race by literally everything they do. Like, they are designing the boss. they are tuning the abilities. Like they're literally, like they are the ones in charge of how hard or easy a boss is. So the fact, like I don't think it's like a bad thing at all that they are trying to hit certain tuning passes for bosses to die in certain times for the race. They're guiding the race in a certain way by changing things mid-competition because it's not going how they want. Yes, and this is very important. You have to keep in mind that the race will first would not actually exist if Blizzard wouldn't specifically try and cater the tuning around the race will first at the start. Because if they make bosses too easy and everything gets cleared in one day, it's boring. If they make it too hard and a boss survives for a month because it's unkillable until you have renown something, that would also be incredibly underwhelming when you think about it, right? Like, we don't want bosses to live for that long, because then they would be incredibly difficult, unkillable even, and it would just be underwhelming. Then there would be like 20 guilds on the same boss because it's an unkillable boss, and once you finally have the thing to kill it, then people go in and kill it, and it's just, you know? I feel like the biggest drawback to Race of First is that there are always the same 3 to 4 guilds competing. No other guilds can get that much support, sponsor community to pull that off. I partially agree, and then at the same time I kind of don't, because the fact that it's not an official race means that we have these like individual broadcasts, right? So as a viewer, it's actually nicer that there's less guilds that are actually competitive enough, because imagine there would actually be like 5 or 6 different guilds that are all that are all capable of winning. You wouldn't be able to follow all of that, right? Like, imagine having to watch 5 or 6 different streams constantly. Like, that would be too much. If it was like an official race, I think it would be cool if there were more guilds competing and that it would actually all be competitive. But the way we have it at the moment, with it being community-based and split broadcasts, I think it's better for there to be fewer guilds. There's a lot of barriers to entries, guys. Like this is not just... Like, that's not just one thing. Like, people say, oh, they don't have enough sponsors to compete. Oh, they don't have enough this to compete. Dude, it's literally everything, yeah? It's the players. It's the experience. It's, as you said, also, like, sponsors and, like, helpers and whatnot. It's the time commitment, the money that it costs. Like, it's everything combined. Yeah, you also have to consider that there really aren't that many players that are even willing to compete in a race so first. Like, the players that are capable to compete and also willing to compete is not that high. The time investment to be a race so first player is insane for what you get out of it. I mean, you have to be super passionate about it, or you need to want to be like a streamer on top of a raider for it to be worth it for an individual raider. If you're only raiding and you do nothing else, like you don't stream, you don't create any other content, you don't do anything else, then you have to be like just really passionate about the game, yeah? Because they don't make money. I mean, not like, they do probably make money, but if they would just go get a normal job, they would make more, basically is what I'm trying to say. Unless they're like a content creator or some other like personality in the game that gets more viewers and whatnot, yeah? I'm curious about what it would be if some common rules would be set, like no splits, for example. I mean, I personally would also like to see a race where the guilds just come together and set rules, but that's not really a possible scenario when so many guilds would have to agree with one another. And then who is the judge? That's the issue. It's like, it's a community-based event. There's no bigger entity that rules over the race first. So if the guilds like come together in a somewhat like private meeting or whatnot, and they decide on some rules, who's enforcing them? Who pays attention to all of this, right? Like, it's a bit of a strange thing where if they say, hey, we're not gonna do any splits, and then they all agree, and then most guilds don't do any splits, but then one, like a Chinese guild does a bunch of splits, but they don't stream it. I mean, you can probably still see it anyway. It's not like it would be hidden. But still, and then they maybe win, and then it's like a shit show, and then people could say, oh, but they didn't really win, but it's like... How do you think Blizzard can get rid of splits? They cannot. I don't think Blizzard can get rid of splits in a way that would not affect a normal player, and that's something that we don't want. I honestly don't think splits are a big deal as a viewer. Okay, so don't get me wrong, I personally hate splits. I never ever want to do splits ever again. I hate splits. But do I care that the Racial First is doing splits? Not really. The Racial First is always going to do the most degenerate stuff possible, yeah? Like, you can literally delete splits, and they will do some other degenerate thing. They are just going to do whatever it takes to get tiny little upgrades here and there. They will just be degenerates. You know, that's just how it is. So, as a viewer, it's really boring to watch splits, right? But then don't watch them. Like, that's what I do. If there's, like, let's say, for example, there's a normal and heroic week. Just don't fucking watch normal heroic week. If Mythic is not released yet, why would I watch a week of them doing heroic and normal? No, that's boring. Just don't watch it. And if heroic and Mythic gets released at the same time, then you can be sure, 100% sure, that the first 2 days, at least, there's only splits. So don't watch the first 2 days. Just don't watch it. Or just like check in once in a while, see if they, like, just open the stream. Are they doing Mythic? No. Turn off stream, you know, like, it's really not that hard. If they don't do anything interesting, then don't watch it. That's my opinion, at least, you know. So I don't really care about splits existing for the Racial First, because I'm not participating, so I don't have to do them. And the players that are doing them, they choose to participate, so they are doing them willingly. And I, as a viewer, I can just, like, tune in whenever they do Mythic. The one thing that I will say is true is the fact that because the Racial First guilds are doing splits, it forces Blizzard to tune the bosses harder, which makes them, by default, almost impossible for anyone not doing splits, which is really bad for the Mythic guilds overall, like the top Mythic guilds. If you are a top 10 or top 20 Mythic guild, and you reach bosses that are tuned for the Racial First, so tuned for split rates, then you can't kill them. Because you don't have the gear, you don't have the resources, the gear, the class stacking available to you to kill these bosses. You can't. Bring back personal loot. I do have to say that I personally also liked personal loot more. And I know that I know that there's a little bit of an unpopular opinion amongst, like, Mythic raiders, but like, the #1 reason why I personally always liked personal loot more is not because of, like, because I like distributing loot. Like, I do generally like Loot Master for a Mythic guild. The biggest problem is that Loot Master or group loot, the way we have it now, makes split raiding so valuable that almost every Mythic guild feels the need to at least do 1 split raid in heroic. Because if you have master loot or, like, group loot like we have now, then by doing 2 heroic raids, you literally double the amount of loot you get on your raiders. With personal loot, that was not true. With personal loot, it was completely useless to do a split raid. My favorite Racial First so far? Well, to be fair, I'm biased because I participated in Racial First, and my favorite Racial First was Hellfire Citadel, of course, because I won. And the boss is really cool. But my most favorite Racial First to watch, maybe Amirdrasil. I think that was really good. I think Amirdrasil was so good because they were so close. Right? I do think Amirdrasil was just really good at the end. Like, it was so good. It was so close.